Thursday night edition of the Anaheim Calling podcast. Jake and I are back to discuss a very busy and packed Ducks preseason schedule. The Ducks, who have now had 3 games in 3 nights. Not something you see in the NHL regular season, but due to the fact that teams can split up their rosters and make that work, here we are with 3 games in 3 nights to break down, in addition to a game against Arizona last weekend that was not televised, but we will still touch on that just a bit. So we're going to quickly go through. Go ahead.
You want to start this thing off with a little bit of trivia?
Yeah, go for it.
When would the last time, at least regular season, would the Ducks have played 3 games in 3 nights?
Is never an option.
It is not an option.
Okay. 1997.
Incorrect.
Before or after?
After.
Ooh, okay, 2002?
Incorrect.
Okay, I give up.
2013, lockout shortened season. I think they did 3
What?
games 3 games in 3 nights, all against the Arizona Coyotes.
Wow.
If I'm remembering correctly.
Okay, well, you might be wrong about that. That seems a little crazy.
Someone in our Twitch chat, please fact check that.
Yeah, that seems off. That seems way too recent to be true.
Well, it's because it was the lockout shortened season, and so they tried to fit in 48 games in like 3 months.
Yeah, but still, 3 games in 3 nights is like unconstitutional or something. So, I don't know. But anyway, sorry to get sidetracked. There was some trivia early on, but hey, that's what we do best with our tangents. So tonight we're going to touch on all the games that occurred within the last week here. We're going to get into the Ducks cuts because the Ducks have been trimming down their roster pretty significantly within the last week. And then we're going to give our overall impressions on guys who have stood out, guys who have maybe disappointed. It's a lot to unpack. So do we have an answer on our trivia before we jump into these recaps?
I'm looking really quickly. I'll have the answer for you, but go for it. I'll get it for you.
Okay, so
let me see.
Make up your mind, Jake.
I'm trying to find it. Yeah, they played. Sorry, it wasn't 3 games in 3 nights against the Coyotes. It was 3 straight games against the Coyotes, but there was. I'm gonna find the 3 straight games though. There wasn't 3 games in 3 nights. I know that.
Definitely wasn't that reason. Okay, let's get into these recaps so we can get through them. Speaking of the Arizona Coyotes, the Ducks played them on Saturday. The Coyotes would get a shootout win against the Ducks after the Ducks mounted a brief comeback in the third period. Coyotes take it 4-3. Goal scorers for Anaheim: Silverberg, Ricci, and Chase DeLeo, who is actually no longer on the roster. Little spoiler there, he's been cut since that time. I wasn't able to watch this game. In fact, no one was because there was no televised stream for this game. No way to watch this. So I don't really have any thoughts on it because I couldn't look at it, and I guess I could look at the stats, but that would be a little weird, just given that I didn't watch it. Do you have anything on this game?
I listened to the game a little bit, looked at the stats. This was the only game that we would have had of Sam Steele so far in the preseason due to the fact that he got hurt, and so he missed the 3 games in 3 nights. But over the course of this game, I believe that line of Steele, Silverberg, and Raquel looked really, really good. They produced a lot of chances. Basically, I remember looking at the stats right afterwards, and that line was basically the only line producing chances, and they scored a bunch. I believe they had a couple of goals for the team. So, good signs from a line that was good at the end of last year in a limited sample size, and potentially is going to be a line that they're going to be utilizing moving forward. Also, quick note on that line, I am voting to call them the podcast line because their initials are RSS.
Oh, I like that.
That's actually, come on, give me that one. That was decent.
I mean, it's a little niche. It's a little fringe. I don't know if I can go that far.
Damn.
It's not bad. Okay. Why don't you just call them the RSS line?
Because that's not as fun as giving them an actual nickname.
Okay. I mean, I just feel like you're making a logical leap from RSS to podcast.
I mean, RSS is the RSS feed for podcasts.
Yeah, but RSS feeds, anyway, this is why these shows take up an hour. That's what we do. Okay, so on Monday night, the Ducks were shut out by the Kings, who they would play again later in the week. 3-0. Ducks couldn't get anything on the board. Not a good game from the Ducks. This one was in LA. I thought overall, so the top line of Antwone with Getzlaf and Terry didn't have a great night. And if memory serves me correctly, Daniel Sprong Didn't have the best game either. He, who I believe was laid out by, was it Sean Walker in the third period, trying to go between the legs. So it wasn't much of a performance from Anaheim. They did, however, I believe, outchance the Kings through most of the game, but couldn't put any past Jack Campbell and Cal Peterson. So what'd you make of this game from the Ducks?
This game was an interesting one. I don't think it necessarily was that bad. Also, real quick, yeah, there were no 3 games in 3 nights. So my trivia at the top was incorrect.
Boom.
Damn.
Boom. I knew it. I knew it.
Overall, this game, I think this was the game where I could look at for the Ducks and say maybe the roster wasn't the strongest, and that kind of influences it. I think that the Getzlaf, Terry, Comtois line had some chances, and I liked what I saw in terms of chemistry from Raquel and Terry together. I think Comtois kind of let them down in terms of having the third cog on that line actually really pushing and giving them someone to get in on the forecheck for him, and I felt like he was a bit of the missing link, or sorry, not the missing link, the weak link on that line. I think the Ducks had chances. They had chances on the power play and just weren't able to score. I think Cal Peterson had a pretty good game. You look at the overall stats from this game, scoring chances were in the Kings' favor, 27-22. Let me see. Expected goals, 2.02 to 1.74. So it's not as if this game was a straight-up 3-0 onslaught by the Kings and the Ducks were completely out of it. It was a fairly close game. I think the only negative that you might have is that the Ducks are probably a better team than the Kings. But
Probably?
Yeah, they should be. But then again,
Should
it is preseason. And so neither rosters are going to be full, and the Kings had a fair amount of their stars going. Granted, the Ducks did also. So a little bit of positive, a little bit of negative there.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it a great game from the Ducks, but like you said, there were some things to take away from it in the positive column. Now, speaking of positive, Tuesday night, so number 2 of 3 in 3 nights for the Ducks, was definitely a positive game. It was the first game at Honda Center of the preseason, also the first televised game on Fox Sports Prime Ticket. So it felt like a return. It felt like the season was really starting that night, even though we were still in the preseason. This was a really good game for the Ducks. They won 4-1 against the San Jose Sharks. Goals from Andreas Martinson, Jakob Silverberg, Brendan Gooley, and Derek Grant going top shelf into the empty net to seal the game.
Yeah.
elite finish. This was a pretty entertaining game.
Yeah.
I know that you were in attendance.
I was.
So what'd you make of it from in close?
It was definitely fun. I think you could definitely tell there was a skill level difference. And it's not as if the Ducks had their full lineup going. I think that
the Sharks, just for context here, had Timo Meyer in their lineup, and that was kind of it.
I think Brendan Dillon was the only other probably NHL.
Brendan Dillon, yeah.
So
says a lot.
They didn't really have any NHLers. Lucas Rodil was probably another one, and they had Aaron Dell in net, whereas the Ducks had a pretty decent lineup. I think the first 2 games of this week, the LA game and the San Jose game, the Ducks kind of had almost a split roster where you had basically half the roster were probably NHLers, half the rosters probably going to be in the AHL or fringe. And you could tell the difference in skill. So it was a good game from the Ducks. I'm not sure if I'm going to have any big overreaching takeaways from this game in terms of talent evaluation. I think Raquel and Silverberg looked really good in this game, and so this is the second game that they've looked really well playing together on a line. This time they had Isaac Lundestrom in between them due to the fact that Sam Steele was hurt. It does make me wonder, though, are those two just so good together, and no matter what center you put between them, they're just going to be driving play? And I think that that's a good problem to have, and it's a good way to be able to protect a young center, whether that is a Sam Steele or an Isaac Lundestrom, whichever one may end up on that line if they end up using that line moving forward, simply because you have 2 guys that kind of take the pressure off the center from doing all the playmaking, take the pressure off of them from basically having to be as defensively responsible as they usually need to be as a center. And I think that that's a good thing, and I'm starting to come to that conclusion that that's how those two work together, based upon, granted, small sample size, but based upon the preseason so far.
It's really tough to take much away from that game, both positive and negative, just because, like you were saying, the team that the Sharks put out there was definitely not their B. I would barely call it a C team. It really was just the Barracuda, their AHL affiliate, plus a few NHL names. But look, we have to work with what we have. And I thought
Mm-hmm.
that just watching the game, Raquel, Lundestrom, and Silverberg looked really good. They connected on a nice little tic-tac-toe play for the second goal of the night. Um, I do, I mean, I do wonder how much this says about Isaac Lundestrom because he really didn't look out of place.
Yeah.
He was making good plays all over the ice, just kind of those quiet plays that help move the puck up the ice into the offensive zone and also keeping it out of those danger areas. All their underlying numbers were really good.
Yeah.
Jakob Silverberg has always been known as a play driver, while Ricardo Kell, it's always been hard to kind of separate him from Ryan Getzlaf
Yep.
because they've always played together. But yeah, I think that's an interesting theory of what those two could do together. And especially, I think the takeaway here is that, or should be, what can Jakob Silverberg do in a more offensive role? Because he's been so just always assigned, basically, before the season even starts, to being a defensive player. And now that he's been asked to maybe do a little bit more offensively, I wonder if we'll see that carry over into the regular season.
Yeah. I think the other notable thing from this game, and this is going to be kind of a trend as we're talking about the evaluation of the preseason so far, but the Fowler-Gooley D pair looked very good.
Looked good. Well, Gooley scored the third goal of the game. Just a beautiful shot that went bar down off the rush on Arundel. That was a really nice one. And Brendan Gooley, throughout this preseason, I mean, we're going to get into it in the player evaluations, the takeaways, but he's been also firing some really nice stretch passes up the ice as well. So he's been really good. That was a good game from the Ducks.
The interesting note from this game, one thing I wanted, I need to find the individual. So keep going. Ignore me.
Let's move on to yesterday's game. This one also at Honda Center. Once again, against the LA Kings.
Give me 1 sec. I found what I was looking for. Brendan Gooley led the Ducks in individual shot attempts in this game by having double the amount of the closest guy with 10 shot attempts. Chase DeLeo was second with 5. So he threw a lot of pucks at the San Jose net, and what that means is a bunch of things. First off, he's not afraid to shoot. Second off, that means he's in the other team's zone a lot if he's able to get 10 shot attempts on net.
Yeah, you could tell that he was really looking to create opportunities for himself, for his teammates. He was just more in an offensive role, which I think is going to be interesting playing next to Cam Fowler if that trend does carry over, because Cam Fowler loves to carry the puck up the ice, loves to get involved as well. And so can both of those guys, it's always the common refrain has always been in the NHL, well, you need one defenseman who's more of a rover and the other to kind of watch his, behind him. And so can Cam Fowler be that guy, or is Dallas Eakins just going to redefine what a pairing can be, asking both of these guys to be more offensively minded? It's going to be interesting, especially considering that Fowler is still playing on his off wing as a lefty on the right side. And there's really, really no indication that that's going to change. In fact, we seem to pretty much know by now. We'll get into it with the cuts, but we pretty much seem to know already who's going to be the Ducks blue line going through the season. It's pretty much set in stone, especially with the recent cuts. But let's move on to last night's game. We'll make this one a little quicker since the game itself was a little less action-packed. The Ducks win this one 2-0. Score one goal that actually went by a goalie. That's from Adam Henrique, from Nick Ricci and Jacob Larson. Nice point shot from Larson that gets deflected by Ricci. Henrique buries it. And then late in the game, Sam Carrick, who was really relied upon by Dallas Eakins down in San Diego last season, buries a empty net goal to make it 2-0 and to seal the game. So one thing that I found interesting from this game, and this is something that's been a bit of a theme in this preseason, at least from the games I've been able to watch, Ryan Getzlaf with a really nice feed to Max Comtois on a 2-on-1, going behind the back, kind of like a no-look pass that Comtois didn't expect. And he just went into his feet, wasn't able to get it on net. Would have been a goal, guaranteed goal, if he had just been able to control the puck and get a shot off. And the same thing happened against San Jose, where it was Getzlaf on the power play, it was definitely Getzlaf on the power play. And Comtois was in the right circle in his off wing and just fanned on a cross-ice pass that would have also been a guaranteed goal if he had made contact. So Comtois has Okay, I don't want to skip ahead too much, but
Save
had
it.
opportunities. He's had opportunities.
We should make mention also, just like the Sharks game, this Kings team was a fairly weak Kings team, as compared to a Ducks team that, quite frankly, probably had their starting six defensemen, or their six defensemen that will be kind of on the ice opening night or something like that. The Ducks were able to, I think, dominate play in this game. Maybe they sat back a little bit near the end, but I think for the most part, this was a game where you had a better Ducks team than a Kings team, and that kind of led to the end result.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other takeaways from these games, just in terms of the games themselves? Anything that you've noticed just for the way the team's playing?
I think one takeaway is that the Ducks goaltending is going to be very good yet again this year. John Gibson in that Sharks game, granted, quality of opponents was not that great, but he just looked so calm, cool, and composed in net. His movements looked very controlled, which is one of the issues that some people maybe have with him, is that he's usually very kind of aggressive, very athletic, really reaching, and he seemed very much more in control. There was actually one very small play that I noticed that was very interesting, that it was a bouncing puck coming in on him, and it was kind of like a dump in, kind of like a half shot, and there was someone on the back post that was driving for the Sharks, and Ducks defenseman was coming back basically in the slot, and he used his blocker to basically pass it to the Ducks defenseman, and went right on the defenseman's stick to lead to a breakout out of the zone. That's a really risky play. If you mess up and it ends up on the stick of the Sharks player going to the back post, that's a for sure goal. But it's a very composed play to be able to make that, and that can lead to the puck getting out of the zone very quickly, and transitioning into offense. And I think that's one of the things that I'm really going to be able to look forward to from this team moving forward, is how they're going to break out of the zone, because the breakout is key. We talked about this a lot last year, that the biggest issue the Ducks had when they were struggling was their breakout. And all the offense has to begin in the defensive zone. And if you can't break it out of your own zone well, then you're going to have issues. And I think where the Ducks ran into issues so far in this preseason is when they had some D pairs out there that maybe weren't the NHL D pairs that we're going to see, and they weren't able to break the puck out of the zone clean, and it led to the team getting hemmed in their zone and allowing chances against. I mean, the very first Kings goal was kind of a result of that. The Ducks, all five men were caught kind of below the goal line. It was a more inexperienced defense pair out there, and it led to a chance against because they had full control and weren't able to get it out.
Yeah, another thing that I've noticed is that the power play looks a lot better. Again, this is so early, all the caveats aside. The way the Ducks are just loading up their power play looks a lot different. A lot of the passes are happening below the dots, below the face-off dots in the offensive zone, whereas so they're kind of going low to high. So they're starting a lot of their plays from the goal line and then either working it through the slot, going face-off dot to face-off dot. There's not a whole lot of action that starts from the point, which is basically the total opposite of what we've seen the last 2 or 3 years under Randy Carlyle, where the Ducks, and even under Bruce Boudreau, I think if you even go that far back, the Ducks power play has always been really focused on getting shots from the point. Well, everything starts at the point.
I think part of that had to do with the personnel also. You had...
Well, but the thing is, the guys that are out there are still... some of the key figures are still out there.
I know. But
you still have Cam Fowler.
What I'm saying is now the Ducks were able to do a 3-4-2 defenseman setup back then. And I don't think they have the personnel for that.
How far are we going back? To the Sami Vatanen?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, even still, I know you don't want me to criticize Bruce Boudreau. I'm thinking that's what this is about.
Maybe.
It was pretty similar under Randy Carlyle. But yeah, so if you look at the Ducks power play the last few years, they've been really point shot happy, which is kind of something that everyone knows to be less efficient. And now it looks as though they're focusing more on getting shots from higher probability areas. I mean, even in one of Dallas Aiken's interviews, he's talked about, he hasn't directly referenced it, but he's talked about expected goals, not directly, but saying how, hey, if you can shoot from an area that's a 28% probability as opposed to 5%, you probably want to shoot from there. And to me, the way his power plays are looking, it seems to be mirroring that, where a lot of the chances are occurring from higher danger areas. So any final thoughts here before we head into our first break?
It's nice to have fun hockey again.
I'm not ready to go that far because it's preseason and these games have just been so bizarre with the rosters. But yeah, the team has generally been pretty entertaining to watch.
Yes.
So on that note, we're going to head into our first break. And on the other side, we will get into the roster cuts. Okay, back from the first break. So over the last week or so, the Ducks have trimmed down the roster size pretty significantly. Now, it's interesting because some players have been placed on waivers, and yet they are still being listed on the official roster. So we're going to kind of do our best to parse out exactly how that looks. I guess that technically the guys who have been placed on waivers haven't cleared waivers yet,
Correct.
so they still appear on the Ducks training camp roster.
Correct.
So the first wave that was announced on Monday, notable names, Antwone Moran was one that popped out to me immediately. I mean, he's one of the Ducks' higher picks in recent years, and not that anyone was expecting him to make the team, but I thought maybe he would get a bit of a longer look, and instead he was part of the first wave of cuts. I thought that was kind of interesting. Anything there?
I don't think it's that interesting. I think it makes sense. There was no real
I don't
chance.
think it's that interesting. Thanks.
Well, no, the reason why.
Thanks, man. No, I'm just kidding.
No worries. It makes sense that they're probably going to want him with the goals, and so the goals camp started on Monday.
There's just not really a whole lot of room for him. He was a second-round pick, which I don't know. I guess I'm looking at him through those lens of hey, what could this guy do for the Ducks?
I think if you're looking at it through that lens, they're going to want to have his development path be the best, and I think part of that development path is getting him into San Diego, allowing him to become accustomed to that team and play the whole season there and make the adjustment to the pro game, and part of that is getting him to the goals camp as soon as possible, in my opinion, because I think there's more that he will learn being in the goals camp, learning that system that he's probably going to be playing in all season than he would get being with the Ducks for the training camp.
Let me ask you this. Who was selected 10 slots before Antwone Moran?
Maxime Comtois.
So,
but the difference is where they're at in their development curve, what position they play, and basically who is above them in that. And so not all players are going to develop the same.
I agree with you that it's not an apples-to-apples comparison, but it's not that far off. I'm trying to say this as best as I can, but there's starting to be some red flags here and there with Comtois' game that we'll get into. Other notable cuts from the first wave, goalies were gone pretty quickly. Roman Durney, Olli Eriksson, all down, as well as Lucas Dostal. They're all down.
Dostal got sent back to Finland.
Yeah, so down as in just not in the NHL.
Mm-hmm.
Alex Dosty also down. But yeah, the first wave, I mean, it's just guys that you would expect that were probably not going to last very long.
Yeah.
Second wave of cuts, again, nothing that really stood out to me either. I mean, Jack Kopaka, Justin Kloos, Hunter Drew, Anthony Stolarz, Chris Weidman. I mean, again, these are all guys who just seem to be minors bound from the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there were some additional names that were placed on waivers today that were not part of the official cuts. That includes Andreas Martinson, Jani Hakanpaa, Chase DeLeo, and Kevin Boyle. So the Jani Hakanpaa experiment.
Really quickly, and Andrew Podorowski.
I skipped over him because
his name's hard.
I don't think anyone actually knows who he is.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah, so Jani Hakanpaa, is it over?
It might be. The interesting thing is he going to go to the AHL?
Well, we'll find out in about 24 hours or less, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, how did he look to you in the games that he did play?
Brutal.
I mean, he definitely did not have a good start, and I think that might be what is all freshest in our minds, but he didn't do anything that really cemented the idea that this guy has to be a part of the team. And I think that that's what he needed to do, and unfortunately, he didn't do that. He just seemed really slow. You can tell that he's a decent puck mover when he has the puck. The problem is that doesn't really happen that often if you can't keep up just physically with the speed of the game. And so I'm wondering where he's going to fit in the AHL if the Ducks are trying to develop other guys or whatever the case may be. So, I don't know.
It just feels like he was a step slow. It felt like he wasn't fast enough for the NHL game. Part of it, I mean, he brought this up in his interview that he's getting adjusted to the NHL ice surface, and maybe it's a whole angle situation, but even then, I don't know. He looked off, and he just looked behind the pace. He didn't look like he stood out as compared to the people he was battling with for a roster spot. So not exactly a surprise. Quick question on this. Do you foresee any of these guys getting claimed?
No.
Yep.
Andreas Martinson. And the thing is, someone brought this up to me on Twitter. Apologies that I'm not remembering the name, but there are also just so many guys going through waivers right now. I wonder if this is the best time. If there's someone you're afraid might be claimed, that just due to the volume that guys just get lost in the shuffle.
Yep.
I don't know if that's valid or not, but it kind of makes sense to me.
Yeah, it's not necessarily getting lost in the shuffle thing. The main issue that you have is a lot of teams are trying to figure out what their roster is. And when you claim a guy,
teams are just distracted. Yeah.
Well, no, it's not that. When you claim a guy, you have to have them on your roster. You cannot send them down to the AHL unless you then want to put them back on waivers, and then the team that put them on waivers in the first place has the ability to claim him and send him down if no one else does. So It's a situation where you have to know that guy will be on your NHL roster, and you have to feel strongly enough about that to claim them. So to me, I don't think any of these, some people might think Kevin Boyle, but to me, a lot of teams know what their goaltending situation is right now, and introducing a new someone who doesn't exactly have a whole lot of NHL experience to be their backup, it's not exactly something that I really foresee happening.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I think Stolars and Boyle are going to be the tandem in San Diego. Seems pretty set in stone there. Andreas Martinson, I believe he scored in one of the games this week. And, I mean, all of these guys, when they were signed, Martinson, Weidman, even Hakanpaa, it seemed unlikely that they were going to be part of the team. Now, Hakanpaa is the only thing that's kind of interesting there is that as a right shot defenseman on a team with very few of those, it seemed like he had a real shot just because of the lack of guys who could fill that need, and wasn't able to do it. So even with that kind of built-in advantage, he wasn't able to solidify a roster spot.
Yep.
So you want to go over the remaining roster here?
Yeah, so I can just run through it real quick if you want. So the remaining roster from a forward perspective is Sam Carrick, Max Comtois, Nicolas Deslauriers, Ryan Getzlaf, Derek Grant, Beau Grew, Adam Henrique, Max Jones, Andre Kasha, Isaac Lundestrom, Ricard Raquel, Nick Ricci, Carter Rowney, Kiefer Sherwood, Devin Shore, Jakob Silverberg, Daniel Sprong, Sam Steele, Troy Terry, and Braden Tracy. And
who has not played.
I'm wondering if they're just having him up to have the experience and then essentially at the end of the week send him back down.
I think that has to be it. Yeah.
The other name interesting is Beau Grew. I think it's a similar situation.
Yeah, I think so as well. He has looked much improved.
Yes.
I want to continue to give him that credit, but probably not going to the AHL and definitely not going to the NHL, just no roster spots. So I think this is more of an experience thing. But he's earned it. I mean, he's looked good.
Yeah.
And
I
think, like you said,
it's junior NHL for him. And I don't foresee him taking a roster spot from anyone in the mix. So he's going to be back, I believe, with Halifax for the season. So, and then on defense, they have Simon Benoit. Sorry.
We finally got confirmation on that after the last pod.
Yeah. Simon Benoit, Michael Del Zotto, Cam Fowler, Brendan Gooley, Corbinian Holzer, Jacob Larson, Hampus Lindholm, Josh Mahura, Josh Mahura and Josh Manson.
Mahura.
And
you had to catch yourself there, right?
Yeah, I for a second maybe thought Mahura was sent down, but no, he's still up with the team. And then in goal, you've got John Gibson and Ryan Miller.
Yep. So, any surprises on the back end, or should we just jump into our evaluations here? I mean, we might as well, since it kind of goes hand in hand.
Sure, let's go through this evaluation. I think for the most part, Simon Benoit and Josh Mahura are not going to make the roster. I think that's a pretty safe assumption. So you're going to end up with Michael Del Zotto, Cam Fowler, Brendan Gooley, Holzer, Larson, Lindholm, Manson. And those are going to be your 7 defensemen with Larson, Holzer, and Del Zotto essentially in the mix for that bottom pairing role. I think as a whole, though, I'm actually pretty happy with the top four, and more than I kind of expected myself to be. Lindholm, Manson have looked like their usual self. In that very first Kings game, they looked very much in control, very much better than basically everyone else on the ice. And
Right.
Gooley, Fowler have really impressed. I mean, you look at their on ice stats for so far; they're both at 54.7% Corsi for percentage at 5-on-5. Gooley's at 63% expected goals for percentage. Fowler at 57%. By the way, just as a reference, Manson's at 60% expected goals percentage. Expected goals for percentage. Lindholm at 52%. And so both of those D pairs are sitting pretty nicely right now. Now, we can get into the fact of quality of competition type of situation, but I think for a team that really struggled at controlling play last year, to have these D pairs being so well is a very good sign, seeing as kind of what I said, that the breakout's going to be so key for this team. And then you also have, from a Corsi 4 percentage, you have both Holzer and Larson being above 50% so far. And so Holzer's really kind of impressed in that right-hand D role on that bottom pairing, and maybe he gets a shot, but also you have Del Zotto, who hasn't looked terrible either. And I don't think this is the strongest set of 6 defensemen that they're going to roll out. But I don't think it's as bad as maybe we all expected it to be.
I am not quite ready to go there yet.
Okay.
I think that Manson and Lindholm are obviously a known commodity. Gooley and Fowler, of course, agreed with you there that they have looked good, but it's just so hard to say because we saw so little of them last season due to Brendan Gooley's injury that I'm kind of withholding judgment until we get to see them against competition that we can trust, I guess is the best way to put that I know that the guys that they're going up against are actual NHL players consistently. But it's encouraging. I mean, it has to be encouraging just because if the Ducks have that known commodity in Manson and Lindholm and then have really anything in Gooley and Fowler, that's a huge, huge plus. And then really if you can then just get anything out of your third pairing, then you're looking at just a workable set of 6 defensemen for Dallas Eakins. So I'm there with you that it's encouraging, but I'm not ready to necessarily go that far yet.
And that's fair. Really quickly, the interesting thing is, if Gooley, let's just say that he plays like he has so far in preseason and also in the little bit that he had last year, how big of a win is that trade?
It's looking really good because you'll recall that the Ducks traded Brandon Montour leading up to the trade deadline last year. Brandon Montour, who was he a second-round pick?
I do not remember. I can look it up, though, for us. Also, really quickly, did I mention Sam Carrick when I mentioned the roster? I think I did, but...
I don't think you may have.
But he's on the roster.
That was 5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So Brandon Montour was a second-round pick in 2014. So basically, they turned Brandon Montour into Brendan Gooley and a first-round pick who became Braden Tracy, who has already looked pretty good in the small, bit of chances we've had to look at him. So that trade is looking really good.
Yeah.
And like you're kind of alluding to there, if Brendan Gooley becomes a reliable second-pairing defenseman for the Ducks, then that's a huge win of a trade. And Brendan Gooley, by the way, was a second-round pick the year after that Brandon Montour was drafted. So, yeah, that trade's looking really good. I mean, we said it at the time, and I don't love to look back at trades, afterwards to judge them, but we were both high on it at the time, and it's only gotten better, which shouldn't be too surprising.
I don't think either of us at the time thought Gooley right now was better than Montour, but it's looking like might be the case.
Well, I remember after watching a few games, I was already kind of ready to go there, which probably is not that responsible, but Brandon Montour just struggled so badly with the Ducks last season, and I almost regret being so critical of him only because he actually did perform very well in Buffalo next to Rasmus Dahlin, which maybe says more about Rasmus Dahlin than Brandon Montour, but regardless, he did play well, and so I do want to at least amend some of the criticism I threw last season. Now, just to bring this up quickly here, Brendan Gooley with Cam Fowler last season had a 53.1 on-ice Corsi for percentage, which is, for those keeping score at home, really good. And they also had a 52.8 expected goals for percentage. This is all at 5-on-5. So they were, again, in a very small sample of about 90 5-on-5 minutes, they were really good together. And Cam Fowler has struggled in recent years to really mesh with any of the partners he's been given. So, like you said, if this can continue, that's probably one of the biggest things that can change the Ducks' fortunes going into the season. Anything else on the blue line? Maybe some of the guys who are still, like Benoit and Mahura. What have you seen out of those guys?
I think he's looked all right. I don't know how much of it is his
partners. Up and down.
Yeah, because he's been paired with Hakanpaa, I believe. And so he hasn't really blown the doors off. And now I don't know how much of that is Hakanpaa. I don't know how much of that is Mahura. But he hasn't really done anything that noticeable. And that's his calling card a bit. He's more of kind of a flashy type of defenseman that's going to jump into the play and score some goals. And I don't think I've noticed him doing that yet so far.
So looking at the Ducks left side right now, which is Lindholm, Fowler, and then I don't know what they're going to do down the line, if they're ever going to add in another righty where maybe Gooley goes down to the third pairing. What does Josh Mahura's future look like with the Ducks, if it's with the Ducks?
I think eventually it's going to come down to Mahura versus Larson. And
really?
what they want. Because right now they're trying Fowler on the right-hand side, which means Fowler's going to be right-hand side defenseman, with Gooley being on the left-hand side there. So leaving Jakob Larson to really be on the left side because Holzer and Delzato's played the right side a fair amount while he's been with the Ducks. I believe last year when he was with the Ducks, he played the right side as Fowler was on the left, which kind of leaves Larson in that final left-hand shot defenseman side. So if Mahura impresses this year with the goals and Larson kind of stumbles, I could really see Mahura getting the call-up and getting into that third pairing role. And so I think at the end of the day, I think Larson, because of his performance, because of his age, because of having some more NHL games, is most likely going to get that left-hand shot defenseman role on the third pairing. But it's possible Mahura jumps up and takes it.
Really? So you seem to be pretty confident, or at least open to the possibility that...
Josh Mahura, sorry. Mahura got hurt against the Sharks. We forgot to mention that. He got hit with a knee on knee.
Well, he came back in. He came back in.
He did. You're right.
Yeah.
Never mind.
But yeah, that was a scary moment, though. Of course, Dalton Prout, known commodity. I'll just leave it at that. But yeah, what's interesting, though, is that Mahura was a third-round pick the year after that Larson was selected in the first round by the Ducks. And they're both left-shot defensemen. And Larson's contract actually runs out next summer as ELC, while Mahura still has 2 years left. So they have time to sort that one out. They can probably just keep kind of kicking the can down the road. But I'm kind of agreeing with you, though, that in a way, I hadn't even thought about that, but it makes sense that Larson has to do is be decent to hold on to that spot and solidify himself as the third pairing left shot deep, because he kind of profiles as that. That's kind of the role that makes sense, the most sense for him. I think that with Mahura, it's harder to justify him in a third pairing role in a way because he's more of a high risk, high reward type player.
Yeah.
And so even for a progressive coach like Dallas Eakins, I still think maybe he'd prefer a Larson there. We'll see.
Yep.
Okay. Any final notes on the defense before we jump into our second break?
Nope. I think that the defense is pretty much set. I think, like I said, I think you're pretty much locked in for the D pairs to be Manson, Lindholm, Gooley, Fowler, and then Larson and either Holzer or Delzato to start the year.
I think Holzer is actually making a case that he should be in the lineup nightly.
He's looked good.
Pretty good.
He's looked really good, which is interesting.
We should give him some credit here because we've definitely had our fun at his expense.
Do we need to retire the Wild Holzer appears joke that we came up with?
Yeah, we're going to see him quite a bit. He definitely exists. So no, he's played really well. Definitely got to give credit where credit's due. And I think that Delzato and Larson might actually be the guys who are rotating in and out night over night, because I don't think that the Ducks ideally would want two pairings where there's two lefties.
Really quick, C. Ortega asked this quick question. I think it's relevant with Delzato. He got his name on the cup.
Mm-hmm.
And so some people were
Yeah,
wondering,
that's
it's
true.
because he played a certain amount of games last year during the regular season. It does not matter that it was not with the Blues. So
Stanley
even
Cup
though he
champion.
didn't, yep. So Stanley Cup champion, name on the cup.
So that's why they brought him back. They wanted to add cup experience to their locker room. It all makes sense now. A guy who's been through the battles. Okay. On that note, as Jake checks his daily fantasy scores,
Nope.
we are going to go
The one and
into
only
our
Bonnie just
second
texted
break.
me. Oh,
And here comes the second break. Okay. Back from the second and final intermission. Let's get into the forwards. Now, before we jumped into that break, you mentioned you received a text from the one and only Bonnie. Do you want to clarify on that?
The one and only Bonnie sent me a screenshot from an article that said Larson appears to have moved further with the edge he had on Josh Mahura. I believe this is from an Eric Stevens article, who got Wednesday off with Holzer after the two played together Monday and Tuesday. Mahura was nursing a sore thigh after Sharks defenseman Dalton Prout delivered an illegal knee hit that got him a game misconduct.
Wow, so you were right on the money there.
I only brought it up because Bonnie actually brought it up in our Twitch chat, so that led her to text me.
Well, there you go. We have unfair advantages in getting our takes here, which is great, which is why you should definitely, if you haven't already, join our live streams on Twitch. That's at twitch.tv/ is it ACPod?
/ACPod.
/ACPod. So do you want to give the rundown there a little bit of how that works?
Yes. So for those of you watching the recorded version of this on YouTube, listening to the recorded version wherever you find your podcast, we do a live stream of our show each and every time at twitch.tv/ ACPod. And it's basically a place for you to watch us, interact with us in the Twitch chat live, and you can basically tell us if we're wrong and kind of make the podcast go the exact way that you want it. You can ask the questions, kind of drive us to answer whatever you want us to answer in terms of kind of with the conversation going a specific way. And it's also a way that you can help support us. If you have Amazon Prime, you have Twitch Prime. And with Twitch Prime, you get one free Twitch Prime subscription each and every month. It's a way that you support your show and your favorite streamers in a way that's completely free to you. And with that, you get a special emotes in the chat, special banner next to your name. And once the stream gets kind of crowded as the season goes on and we get to questions, we will try to prioritize all of the different Twitch Prime subscribers to our show and prioritize their questions. So, fumbled my way through that a little bit. It's preseason still.
Yeah, we're still ironing out our game. Sharpening our skates.
I'll get that locked down. I'll get that locked down at some point.
We're not quite there yet. We're just hoping to not be cut, to not be sent down to San Diego.
We're just fourth
we don't have to
liner.
worry about that.
We're just fourth liners grinding away right now.
We're just trying to make the team. Yes. Now, on that note, so we spent quite a good chunk of time there talking about the blue line, which I think was productive because we made some decent conclusions, I would say. I actually didn't realize how close Mahura, or it never hit me how close Mahura and Larson are kind of in the pecking order in a way, because we think of Larson as, at least I think of Larson as this guy who's been around forever, but Mahura is only 1 year younger, 1 year drafted, 1 year further away. And so it's not as if there's such a gap between the two. I mean, obviously the gap is that Larson was a first round pick, albeit a 27th overall pick. So let's get into the forwards. There's a lot to unpack here. And let's start with the famous trio. Now, we can't really say a whole lot about Sam Steele because he's barely played.
Mm-hmm.
He's been hurt. So let's organize a trio this way. Let's start with Daniel Sprong. Because as we've talked about a lot over the course of the summer and even last season, the Ducks have an overcrowded group of forwards on the wings. And there's going to be guys who are just not going to fit into the picture, at least on a nightly basis. And Daniel Sprong, with Jakob Silverberg ahead of him, with guys that are far more established in the lineup, Andre Kasha is another guy that comes to mind. He's not necessarily a lock to be on. I'm not going to say to be on the team, but at least to be in the lineup night in and night out. So how have you kind of seen his game either go in a positive direction this preseason or maybe take some hits? What's your takeaway from Daniel Sprong?
I think the positive from Daniel Sprong is he shot the puck a lot.
Yeah, I mean that's always a good barometer for him, a good bellwether, because he is a shooter.
He is a shooter. I think the main issue that you're going to find with him is the fact that his chances haven't been that great. And so let me just find real quick. I'm curious where. Yeah. So at 5-on-5, he was second on the team in terms of shots on goal. and that's in 3 games. He's also, let me see, he's first on the team in terms of shot attempts, first on the team in terms of, well, actually, no, he's had some decent scoring chances, so I take that back. He's second on the team in terms of scoring chances, individual scoring chances, and let me just see real quick. He is 4th on the team in expected goals, so he's generating a fair amount of chances going the other way for himself. I think the issue that you're gonna find, and let me just confirm this. Actually, no. My eye test was a little bit wrong. He's been driving when he's been on the ice. Play's been going the other way. I think maybe the only thing that will be a knock on him is that he's only been on the ice for 1 goal for and been on the ice for 2 goals against. So from people that more look at a traditional stats perspective, I hate plus minus with a passion, but he would be a -1. And that's going to look negatively on him. But I think overall, you look at his game, you look at what he's done exactly kind of what he needed to do so far in terms of putting up shot attempts, getting into dangerous chances, and putting up chances. I don't think he's actually scored a goal yet in the preseason, and maybe that's the only knock on him is that he hasn't actually put up any points. He has at 5-on-5 only 1 assist, and it's a primary assist in 3 games, and so maybe you'd like to see him put up a goal with all those shots.
Yeah, he's been on the ice for a couple goals where his defensive involvement was dubious at best. There was one where he was trailing, and he was definitely trying to give the impression he was skating hard, but it didn't look great. And there was another play where I think he just forgot his man or something like that. And so that's always going to be the knock on him, and especially if he's not scoring. It's just, again, even for a guy like Dallas Eakins, this will be a really good litmus test for where Dallas Eakins kind of sees his 4th line going, because if Daniel Sprong isn't in the top 9, is the team willing to put him on the 4th line? I think that there's definitely an argument to be made why he should still be in the lineup regardless of where he is, because like you mentioned, when he's on the ice, he's generating offense, he's getting pucks on net. It's just, is this coaching staff, now led by Dallas Eakins, ready to go to that length in terms of how they organize their roster?
Yeah, I think they should. Whether or not they do is the question.
And that's the thing, because we've seen a line of Delorier, Rowney, and Grant in some of the skates, and that seems like that's a very plausible 4th line for the Ducks.
Mm-hmm.
Grant is not a guy who I think will be spending much time in the AHL, and Rowney is he's signed to be this team's 4th line center, and then Delorier was traded for, so clearly the team, the organization wants him in the lineup. So all this to say that Daniel Sprong, I don't know if he's necessarily moved the needle one way or the other, but I just think it's unresolved at best, I guess I'll say.
I think the main issue that you have with Daniel Sprong is the fact that he is not waiver exempt. He requires waivers to be able to be sent down, and I would highly doubt he would clear waivers. I think someone would put a claim in on him. Because
someone would take him.
Someone would definitely take him because of the potential that is there. And
he had 14 goals last year in 47 games.
And the Ducks
That's not nothing.
And the Ducks gave up someone who actually kind of thrived a bit in Pittsburgh, and Marcus Pettersson. So that would be basically Bob Murray essentially saying that I lost this trade. I failed. But if he were to put him on waivers. Much. And so I just really don't foresee that happening. And maybe that's a reason why they play Daniel Sprong, is to try to maybe showcase him if they're looking to trade him. Maybe it's a situation of trying to get the best out of a player that you did a prospect for prospect trade on, and trying to get the best out of him.
Right.
I just really don't see them kind of giving up on him right now. He's at least going to get another year or two, I think.
So that's an interesting take, because if you look at the Ducks' top 3 right wingers, it's Silverberg, Kasha, and Troy Terry. And to me, those are pretty locked in.
Yep, agreed.
I know you agree on the Terry front.
Yep.
But I don't see Terry going back to the AHL. I think that ship has kind of sailed. I mean, he tore it up. There's not really much left for him to prove. And so that really realistically leaves one spot on the team on the right side left open for either Sprong or Kiefer Sherwood, or, as we've seen, potentially Derek Grant. And so someone is just going to get lost in that shuffle. It's just bound to happen. And so will it be Daniel Sprong? Will it be Kiefer Sherwood? I don't know, but it's going to be really interesting to follow. I mean, any takeaways on Kiefer Sherwood?
I think Sherwood's.
So Sherwood is. Sorry to cut you off, but Sherwood is waiver exempt. I forgot to mention this. Sherwood is waiver exempt, which could be, I think, foreshadowing a little bit what will happen here, because the Ducks can easily move him up and down, without any issues, whereas they can't with Sprong. And so maybe Sprong will just be the 13th forward. Who knows?
Here's the issue with Sherwood. In 10 games, that waiver exemption goes away.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So
okay.
I really don't foresee Kiefer Sherwood being on the Ducks at all this year, because it's either he plays one more year, whether in the AHL or NHL, or plays 10 NHL games, and then his waiver exemption goes up. So I could really see them kind of using this year to keep him down in the AHL, maybe call him up if they need someone for that right wing side. I don't see him getting more than 10 games, though. More than 9 games in the NHL, because I don't think they're going to want to lose him because I think someone would claim Kiefer Sherwood on waivers.
So are you ready to go this far that Kiefer Sherwood might not be back with the Ducks a year from now? Because he is a free agent next summer.
Ooh, that's the interesting question. Do you think...
Because I think he's good enough to be an NHL player.
Is he a restricted free agent?
He is an RFA, but, I mean, the Ducks don't have to qualify him.
No, but I think the Ducks will qualify him.
They could. I mean, he definitely serves a purpose just as a minor leaguer, but he might just not want to be around. I don't know. I mean, it's going to be interesting because for him, I think that there's a very clear opportunity to go. I mean, I'm really high on him as an NHL player, not necessarily as a top 6 guy, but a guy who could very easily be a good third liner that can drive play, gets a lot of shots on net. And so it's going to be interesting because if I was his agent, for example, him remaining on the Ducks just seems like a weird situation to me.
Well,
Andre Kasha getting traded would have done wonders for Kiefer Sherwood long term, but now I don't know. It's just an odd kind of setup here.
Yeah, I don't think. I mean, the thing that you're missing there is his agent and him don't really have a say in it.
Well, they don't, but they can grumble.
They can grumble, but they don't really have a say in it. He's gonna be qualified. His qualifying offer is gonna be cheap. It would be real dumb to not throw him that qualifying offer.
Well, that's the thing, and also it's a cost benefit. So for Sherwood, again, like you said, they don't have much of a say in it, but also for him, just maybe having a contract is already good enough as an undrafted guy, and going to another team where he has a chance to prove himself might not be as important as just having that security.
The only way I could see Sherwood with the Ducks this year is if they showcase Daniel Sprong for an eventual trade and eventually move him for something. And then that opens up a spot for Kiefer Sherwood potentially on the Ducks roster.
So let me ask you this.
Mm-hmm.
In a year from now, or let's say at the start of I love how we're in the preseason and we're already talking about next year.
Yeah.
But next year, are Sherwood and Sprong both on the team? Or both in the organization, to be
I think one's gone.
More precise. Yeah, I think so too. And I think that if I had to bet, I think I'm going to side with you here since you're making more sense that Daniel Sprong seems like the more likely to go. But we'll see. He could also have a breakout year where he gets 20, 25, and the Ducks realize, hey, maybe now.
Maybe having potential 20 goal scorers on every single line is a good idea.
Yeah, and that's the thing. If they are ready to go that far in their methodology, then why not? Okay, so we're actually getting close to the hour mark, which is what happens in these tangents. Let's switch over to the left wing.
Wait.
Max Jones, go ahead.
Real quick, I'd be remiss if I didn't say Troy Terry's looked good so far this preseason.
He has, but as expected.
Yes.
I mean, I think that for him now it's all about NHL.
True.
Regular season games.
Had to mention it.
Hey, but that's a compliment. That's a compliment to your boy. He's past that threshold. I'm not really looking at him as a prospect anymore. Okay, let's jump over to guys who I think are still prospects on the left wing. Let's go with the Maxes, Max Comtois and Max Jones. Do either of them start the season with the Ducks?
I think Max Jones does. Max Comtois starts in the AHL.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
You think Max Jones starts the season with the Ducks?
I think Max Jones starts the season with the Ducks.
Can they fit him? That's a lot of forwards.
Yeah, I think that they can because what is it? It's going to be Ricard Raquel on the left wing. You're also going to have potentially Nicolas Delorier, Nick Ricci, and that's it. Right?
Well, Raquel is a left winger.
Yeah, I said Raquel.
Okay, so Raquel, what about Devon Shore?
I think Devon Shore could go in and out with Delorier.
Okay, and then Daniel Sprong.
Daniel Sprong plays the right side.
Yeah, but are we adding up to 13 or 14 here?
Adding up to 14.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting because I don't know what kind of role he's going to play if he makes the team out of camp. So you're saying, what I'm gathering is that Jones has looked better to you than Comtois?
Yes. I think Jones has done a bit better, both at 5-on-5 with just driving play, and in terms of also getting his own shots, I think he's done a better job out of the two. And I think that just kind of also builds upon what happened at the end of last year. I think Jones was impressive, and I know, granted, Comtois really didn't have a say in it because he was in the queue at the time, and so he couldn't really combat Jones and kind of make his case then. But I think that Jones has built upon what he did last year and played some pretty good hockey so far to start the season or start the preseason. I think Comtois has been all right, but I think he's kind of looked a little bit of a step behind at various points in time. And I think that can happen with Comtois. I mean, he hasn't played a full professional season yet. And so it wouldn't shock me if they want to give him time in the AHL. And so for me, Jones would most likely, it's possible that we'll have a lineup with Jones and Terry being on the same line as Getzlaf to start the year.
Ooh, yeah, that would so you're kind of saying that Raquel is going to get moved away from Getzlaf?
I think Raquel is going to be with Silverberg, and I think they want to have Sam. So starting to spin it a little bit away from this conversation, unless you have anything you really want to say about Max Jones and Max versus Max Comtois.
Well, one thing I did want to add is I feel like the roles have kind of reversed for Max Jones and Max Comtois, where Max Jones, hasn't necessarily been lighting it up. He hasn't scored, but what was really driving the hype around Comtois last year was that he was just finishing at a high rate. And whereas Jones was putting up a lot of shots. Jones has scored. I don't know why I said that.
Oh, Max Jones has scored. Did we forget about Nick Ricci?
I think you did.
I think I definitely did forget about Nick Ricci.
No, you did say Nick Ricci. You did say him. You might just not remember it.
Yeah, fair. We talk a lot on this show.
Anyway, no, but what I wanted to say is that Comtois has been kind of more of the puck luck guy. Now, I'm not saying he's getting lucky, but he was the guy early last season who was just converting on a higher number of chances, and it just put a lot of shine on him. He does seem to be a good finisher, but he kind of, that maybe boosted his stock a little higher than it should have been in terms of his NHL readiness. Whereas Jones, who just couldn't score during the end of last season, he was shooting a paltry, I'm forgetting what his shooting percentage
was like now, 2%, 2 or 3%.
It was insanely low, but he was getting a lot of shots. And now the roles haven't necessarily perfectly reversed in terms of shooting percentage, but Comtois just hasn't been finishing. I mentioned earlier, he's had a couple chances to bury some goals. And if he does that, then maybe the conversation goes in a different direction. But because he hasn't, I think his 5-on-5 deficiencies are just a little more glaring. And I'm with you that I think he's going to go to the AHL. Now, I think they might both go, but if I had to pick one to start the season with the Ducks, it would be Max Jones.
Yeah, and I think that was something, honestly, we talked about Max Comtois back during his first stint with the Ducks.
This isn't new information.
No, his 5-on-5 numbers weren't that great. He was scoring a lot, but it was kind of a bit of a non-repeatable type of streak that he was on. And so it's a situation where I could see him going down to be able to work on various things. So kind of transitioning, let's really quickly give each of our opening night lineups before we jump into some questions.
Yeah, let's do that. So you want to go first?
Yeah, I can go first. So I think we're going to get, just based upon what we've seen in preseason, what I think the coaching staff wants, and what kind of makes sense to me. I think the top three lines are going to be fairly interchangeable between being first line, second line, third line. So don't take this as me saying one of them's first line, one of them second line, one of them is third line. But I think we're going to get Max Jones, Ryan Getzlaf, and Troy Terry together. We're going to get Ricard Raquel, Sam Steele, Jakob Silverberg together. We're going to get Nick Ricci, Adam Henrique, and Andre Kasha together. And then for the fourth line, this is really where it kind of gets interesting, but I think that more than likely Delorier, you trade a pick for him. He's going to start the season on the team. You're going to get Delorier. You're probably going to get one of Grant or Rowney at center, and you're probably going to get Sprong on that right wing.
So Devon Shore is your extra forward.
I have Devon
one of your two.
Devon Shore and one of Rowney and or Grant as my extra forwards.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't really have a good read on who's going to play with Getzlaf because the lines have been in a blender.
Yeah.
In this preseason, but I'm going to agree with you pretty much 99% on the forwards. So you want to get into your blue line?
Yeah, my blue line's going to be Lindholm, Manson, Gooley, Fowler, and then Larson, Holzer.
Yep, agreed. And then in net, John Gibson, Ryan Miller.
John Gibson.
Okay. Now, do you want to jump into some questions? So we're just passing the hour mark here. So we can do a few questions, but we are kind of pushing it. So let's jump into it.
So let me find this. From Bonnie, question was, will the Ducklings always be called the Ducklings because of their special season last year? Maybe this is a bit controversial. I don't think last season was a special season for the Ducks kids.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, who are we talking about here?
I think Bonnie's talking about Terry and Jones.
Or Steele?
Maybe.
I mean, they had great seasons in the AHL. Steele and Terry did.
Yeah.
Terry was a point per game player in the AHL, but I wouldn't really call it a special season. It was kind of what we expected, maybe from a positive expectation, but nevertheless, it was just kind of them fulfilling the promise that they had showed before.
Yeah,
not fulfilling, but just building on it.
I think if any season's going to be a special season, it would be this one.
Well, because now they're legitimately relied upon pieces of the lineup. Like, they're there.
Well,
it's both out of necessity and the fact that they have to find out what they have in these players.
Well, and also the other thing is the Ducks are going to go as these kids go. If they take a step back and don't produce like we all hope they will, the Ducks team could be in the lottery for the first overall pick.
Well, see, that's the thing that I don't necessarily agree with.
Okay. Go for it.
Now, the reason for that is because, yes, there is a youth movement on this team, but there's still a lot of guys who have been around.
Agreed.
And who can still play. I mean, Rickard Rakell, you can almost pencil him in for at least 25 goals this season. He only had 18 last year, and I think he's probably going to hit 30 again. Andre Kasha, if he stays healthy, even if he plays his usual 60-something games, is still a very solid contributor.
Yeah.
Ryan Getzlaf, maybe in a slightly diminished role, is going to have a bounce-back season. And then Jakob Silverberg in an offensive role could have a really good year. So I don't think that the Ducks' success this season necessarily hinges on the youngsters. You could argue that it may determine their ceiling. They can only be so good if those guys aren't performing. But I think the Ducks actually have a kind of a decent baseline of where they could of how good they could be, even without those guys blowing the doors off everyone.
Yeah. I think
Look at me being a Ducks optimist.
I think that's probably fair, actually. Maybe I'm being too negative with trying to put a...
Well, I just think we forget that this team is not totally revamped.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of guys who have been on the team.
Yeah.
Adam Henrique is another guy.
True.
Just names.
So Bob gives the question: do you think Eakins values Ricci as much as Randy Carlyle did? I don't know if Randy actually valued Ricci that much, seeing as he didn't give him power play time. He didn't really put him in good situations to succeed. I think actually Dallas Eakins may value him more, especially when you look back on his time being coached by Dallas with the goals. I think he had like 20 some odd goals in like 30 or 40 games. He had a really good stretch there with the goals. And so I am actually very excited now to see what Dallas Eakins can do with Nick Ricci.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's just on a tangent here, but that's such a really big just point of intrigue for me this entire season is that guys under Randy Carlyle were really set in their roles. You could guess the lineup going into any season, and now everyone is up in the air. I mean, we've always assumed that Rakell and Getzlaf are together. Looks like that might not be the case, right? Which is a huge departure from what we've seen in the past. Silverberg has always been in a checking role, and now he's seems to be a lock for the top six. And so there's a lot that could change this season in ways that we just haven't really become accustomed to under Randy Carlyle. And yeah, just to echo what you were saying, Nick Ricci had 16 goals in 38 games
Yeah, so
for
not
the
20,
goals in
but
15-16. But
yeah.
yeah, but I mean, basically a lot more
And
of a pace there.
not trying to go on too big of a tangent, but I think Nick Ricci gets a bit of a bad rap. I think his underlying numbers are pretty good. And I think if he's able to be put in a situation to succeed, he's going to be able to have more success with the franchise and not exactly kind of have this negative connotation with him that the current fan base has with him. And I think that this season can do a lot to repair the reputation of the player within the fan base. But we'll see. I mean, the thing that everyone harps on, and this is a fair criticism of him, is his penalties. I mean, we saw it in the Ducks Kings game last night that he took a penalty that was pretty unnecessary with goaltender interference, and that's one thing that needs to be cleaned up, and it's a simple thing to clean up also.
Yeah, I mean, Max Jones is kind of guilty of that as well, which I find interesting because that was kind of the rap on him in juniors, and he took one really bad slashing penalty against San Jose that was just totally unnecessary. But yeah, I mean, people kind of forget that a couple seasons ago, Ricci scored 14 goals over basically what was a full season, and last year only played 60 games and had 9. So had he been fully healthy, he could have put up, I mean, flirted with 20 goals. So I think that there's no reason that, especially with a little more power play usage, that he could become a 20-goal guy. It's actually perfectly feasible to me.
Yep. Let's go with this question from Kempafu, our good friend Tony asked, from what we've seen in the preseason games, who do you think looks like the best player on the ice for the Ducks?
The best player on the ice? Wow, that is a tough one.
It's a very loaded question.
I'm going to go with Rickard Rakell. He's looked very, very good. He's looked very confident with the puck. And maybe I'm looking at this through the lenses of the interview he gave, talking about just how different things are under Dallas Eakins and how he was so touched by Eakins visiting him in Sweden, just like he did with Silverberg as well. But Rickard Rakell has actually looked just kind of back to where he was maybe a couple seasons ago, where he just seemed unafraid to make a move anywhere on the ice. There was a point in the San Jose game where he was just kind of having fun out there, which you could just see it. He was just trying stuff, obviously against a much weaker opponent, but that's kind of what you want to see from Rickard Rakell. He is that type of player who thrives when he's skating in transition and he's just making moves, breaking defenders down, and then getting good shots off from in tight. And I think that if he can return to that, he's going to be a huge factor for the Ducks this year. And to me, he's been the guy who's been the most impressive, at least from an eye test level.
Yep, I think that's fair. The Mo Morg asks, what do you think about Terry and Getzlaf on the same power play?
I'm waiting for that to work.
Hey, it got a great chance. It got a great chance, and Getzlaf just didn't finish. Troy Terry set him up perfectly for the one-timer and just wasn't able to finish it.
Well, the thing that encourages me about that is that Troy Terry is kind of a perfect complement to Ryan Getzlaf if they're going to use Getzlaf on kind of that goal line role, which they were doing in the couple of the games this week, against San Jose. And I think that the move to get Getzlaf away from the point and closer to the net, it just makes more sense.
Yeah.
He's a really good playmaker. And he doesn't have this big shot, so there's not this huge kind of advantage to having him out at the top of the blue line. And so him down low as a distributor with Terry at that right faceoff dot could be actually a really nice connection. And if nothing else, it's just two threats that the penalty kill has to account for, leaving guys like potentially Nick Ricci or Jakob Silverberg to really benefit in the middle of the ice. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of reason to think that can work, but we just have to see it happen. Yep,
agreed. Yeah, I'm excited to see both those guys in the power play. I mean, the one little glimpse we got was really fun to watch. The interesting thing with that was that it was very obvious they went to the 1-3-1 and had Fowler up at the top with Getzlaf and Terry on the two sides, and I forgot who was in the bumper role, but I would assume Adam Henrique probably ends up there, and then Nick Ricci in front. And I think that's a pretty decent setup, honestly, for a power play because it gives you two guys that can basically make seam passes throughout. And I think both Getzlaf and Terry, Terry's seeming like he's becoming more and more of a pass-first type of player, although when he gets in tight, he's not afraid to shoot it. But it seems like in that setup, they're both willing to take the shot when the cross-ice pass comes to them. And it also gives them the option of Adam Henrique in the middle. Fowler can end up kind of roaming around, kind of distributing the puck, and then Nick Ritchie is able to be in front and kind of be on puck retrieval duty behind the goal line.
Well, yeah, and you've got Rickard Rakell on the left side as a shooter. And I think Getzlaf was actually down low. Anyway, there's a lot more options now that they're actually adopting modern principles.
Yes.
Who would have thought?
Exactly. But yeah, that's going to do it for questions. Thank you all for giving us those. Once again, make sure to tune in live. If you become if you have Amazon Prime, you get Twitch Prime, you can sub to the show. And with that, we will prioritize your questions as the chat gets a bit more busy as the season goes on.
Absolutely. So on that note, we're going to wrap up. This is probably going to be our last preseason podcast. I'm thinking that the next one we record, the Ducks have their first game of the regular season next week, and that is going to be next Thursday, October 3rd, against Arizona.
1 week from tonight.
Yeah, exactly. 1 week from tonight, the Ducks will be playing regular season hockey. Can't believe that we're already here. It's actually kind of insane to think about how fast the offseason went by. But here we are, so definitely get excited. And I'm guessing that the next podcast we do will be the post-game for that season opener.
We may try to get one in before that as just a final little preview episode. We'll see.
Yeah,
we'll talk about it off air.
We may do just one big season preview just to kind of have it neatly in there. But it's either going to be that or just the wrap-up and a post-game show for the Arizona game. Either way, you're going to start getting a lot more podcasts from us. As you may know, if you're a long-time listener or if you're a new listener going into the season, we do a show after every single Ducks game. And let me tell you, that is no small feat. It's something that we love to do. It's something that we have no problem doing, but it does take up time. It does take up resources. And we want to give you as good of a product as possible. And so if you want to support the show, help keep this great big endeavor of ours going, there's a couple ways that you can do that. Jake already talked about it earlier. We'll get into that maybe again here a little bit. But basically, if you have an Amazon Prime subscription, you also have a free Twitch Prime subscription where you can subscribe to your favorite streamers every month. So if you want to do that to support us, it really does help. That's at twitch.tv/ACPod. After every game, we do a live stream. There's going to be 82 of these. So there's going to be a lot of live streams. And probably more than that if you count some of the probably breaking news episodes we're going to do. But another great way to support us is going to be through patreon.com/ACPod. So for $5 a month, you get 2 bonus episodes. So not only do you get all of the content that we provide for each and every game, but you also get 2 additional episodes. And these ones are a lot of fun for us. We get into league-wide topics or really just anything. You know, we rank food. We rank Star Wars movies. We kind of went all over the map.
We should do a really off-the-wall type of Patreon episode. We always at some point talk about hockey.
No hockey.
At some point it comes back to hockey. We should do a just completely random one on the topic of anyone's choosing. So for those of you listening to this that are Patreon members, let us know if you want that from us. And if you do, in our Discord chat that we have, which you can access to if you're a patron, whether it's at the $1 tier or the $5 tier, let us know on there what you would want us to talk about, because I feel like Felix and I can get into a pretty good argument about some random stuff.
Absolutely. No, we've had some fun on those. And if you're just a fan of the show, maybe a fan of all the silliness that we can provide, then the Patreon is kind of that, but accelerated. It's a little more unfiltered. And so I highly recommend it if you're a fan of the show. We're going to come up. Last season, we did a little bit of a drive at the beginning of the season. We gave you guys a goal, and we had a watch party as a result where a few of the patrons met up in Long Beach with Jake to watch a Ducks game. So we're going to try to come up with something like that. If you have any ideas as a current patron, definitely let us know in the Discord chat. But yeah, that's patreon.com/ACPod. Now, of course, another really easy way to support the show is going to be by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. So if you're enjoying the show, if you're a new listener, old listener, doesn't matter. If you have something that you want to share about the show to let other people know, a great way to support us without spending any money is just by leaving a review. So just type in Anaheim Calling on Apple Podcasts or just type in Anaheim Ducks. We'll come up either way and just leave us a nice review. Doesn't have to be nice. We also just want to hear what you have to think. If you have some constructive criticism, we're always open to it as well. We want to make the show better. But either way, that's a great way and an easy way to support the show. It takes about 2 minutes. I don't know. I've never actually timed it. I haven't left one for our own show. That'd be a little weird. Okay, and another way, finally, I promise we're going to get through this. Of course, make sure to check out the website Anaheim Calling. That's our home base. That's where all of this content kind of stems from. Vox Media, AnaheimCalling.com. A lot of great Ducks content that goes up there every day. There's a lot more on the way this season. We've brought in a bunch of new writers. Our staff is freshened up, and of course, the podcast will be there. So if you're a Ducks fan, real hardcore fan, then I recommend keeping it locked into AnaheimCalling.com and at Anaheim Calling on Twitter. Now, of course, if you're not an Apple person, there's other places that you can listen. Stitcher is one of them. Spotify is also one of them. And Jake, you want to talk about the YouTube channel a little bit?
Yes. So you can find us at YouTube. Search for AC Pod there. And from there, if you watch our videos there, if you want to actually subscribe, that actually helps us out a lot. And if you want to like the videos, if you're enjoying what you're seeing, and also if you want to comment, I see all the comments that happen there. And so I'll respond if they have a question. If you have anything that you want to ask us specifically, I can respond to it there. And yeah, it's basically just another way to have access to the show, another way to watch us. We're trying to make your life as easy as possible by giving you many different avenues to be able to watch, listen, enjoy our show.
Absolutely. And lastly, of course, Jake and I are both on Twitter. We spend a lot of time there, as people who cover hockey tend to do. If you want to just get our reactions to stuff as it happens, Jake is on Twitter at ReindeerGames91. I'm on Twitter at Felix_Sicard. So that is going to do it for tonight's show, guys. We do appreciate you listening. We're almost there. We're 1 week away. We will talk to you then.
Bye.